Yeah, so if you want to turn off your sound, so these aren't the best slides on the planet. I have been very distracted with the Casapo website, which is about to be ready in a couple of days or a week or so. And I'm also busy with the nonprofit, but the notes are comprehensive. So without any further ado, we will begin. So basically, when I do a look forward, I like to give my clients an overview picture to start with. So like starting from broad themes and then become more and more and more specific. That's how I tend to do it. So that they start, like we slowly zoom in on like periods that are active. So for our first lesson, we're going to start with some of these broad themes and look at how to operate them. And I'm also I'll hop out of the slideshow and I'm going to go into Solar Fire and show you what I use and so on. So the first one that we're going to start with is Firdaria. And Firdar, it's a Persian word. It means period of life. And one period is called a Firdar. Many are called Firdaria. And basically, it's a Time Lord technique. So you're looking to see which planets in the natal chart are highly activated. That's what you're after. And this one, it's fine to use with the tropical zodiac. So I am going to hop out of my Solar Fire, out of my, and I'm going to hop into Solar Fire. I'm going to hop out of the presentation and into Solar Fire. And I've chosen Winston Churchill's chart for our lesson today. Let me just get that. Y2-PRED. We've got Winston Churchill and we've got Princess Anne. So I think let's just start with Princess Anne. We can also open up good old Churchill. We'll open him up in tropical. I have kept the chart's whole sign because at this very broad brushstroke, whole sign works brilliantly. If you use tropical, it's fine. You can use the tropical, if you use Placidus. So I'm using the tropical zodiac. That's the zodiac that Rod taught us with, and that is very common in the Western world. So basically, let's have a look at Princess Anne. So Princess Anne's chart here in the middle, with Firdaria, the first thing we have to determine is sect. And in fact, we don't actually have to determine sect, but I'm giving you the theory behind it so that you have some understanding of the tool that you're using, because I think that's important. As excellent practitioners, we should know where our tools come from and how they're put together. We can then get the computer to calculate everything for us. I have no problem with that. I think it's a wise move. It saves you a lot of time. Okay, so we just have to note she's born at 11:50 in London on the 15th of August. Her sun is very much above the ascendant, descendant. Oh, for some reason I've got equal sign here. Okay. It doesn't matter whether we're using whole sign, equal sign, Placidus houses, it doesn't matter. Okay, big thing is she is a solar person by sect. And why we have to notice that is if the person is born with the sun above the ascendant-descendant horizon, the Firdaria start with the sun. what we'll see with Winston Churchill is that the Firdaria, his sun is below that horizon, the ascendant descendant horizon, and his Firdaria start with the moon. So, like in your notes, I've given you some more detail about the history. From what the modern scholars can determine, I've got a very interesting book, and I did quote it here. It's by Y2-PRED, and he basically traced it back to an astrologer called Al-Andazagar, who died, as far as he can determine, around 632 of the current era. So very much Persian. And then it was passed on to various different authorities through the ages, and then to the Muslim Arabic astrologers and so on. So when this person is a sun person, so just as a little note, sun people like to shine. Just as a just a little, you can just sort of bear that in mind when you look at the chart, and you can see that it's a sun sect. Sun is the team leader of the sect. These people like to shine. If it's a moon person, they like to flow. So just a little quick, these little quick things help us to be very, very quick in grabbing bits of information that just inform us about this person that's coming to see us. And so I've given you the times. So the sun, for the big Firdars, for the main periods, the sun gets 10 years, followed by Venus 8, Mercury 13, the moon 9, Saturn 11 years, Jupiter 12, Mars 7, and then come the North Lunar Node for 3 years and the South Lunar Node for 2 years. That takes us to 75 years of age. And if the person lives beyond that, you simply start the process all over again. Okay, so that's your main Firdars. And then there are sub-Firdars. Now, in this book by Subramyan, he wants to put the nodes alongside the traditional planets. But for now, let's just keep it the way Solar Fire gives it to us, and that is without the nodes. And so here we can see I have this on my natal chart page, the Firdaria table. And then we can see the various planets coming in to join up with the sun. And it is in the Chaldean order of the planets: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Moon. Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Mercury. Yeah. Well, I think it starts, where it is. But anyway, basically, it is the Chaldean order, but I suppose only as far as it kind of goes, based on, like here for Saturn, there's Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. There's the whole business, because that's the proper order with a starting point at Saturn. Okay, so that's just a bit of theory. So how do we use this? Okay, okay, just to show you, if you don't have this on your natal chart, you can go to reports, and you can go to tabulations, and then you'll see there's Firdaria, Al-Biruni, and Schunner. Schunner was a German astrologer from about the 1600s, as far as I can recall. Al-Biruni, I think, is probably 900s. I don't remember exactly when Al-Biruni was. Okay, but that's not very important. But basically, those two astrologers used this particular version, where the nodes get added in at age 70. North node at age 70, South node at age 73. And so the Firdaria are the same for all people with sun above the horizon. They'll all have these particular ages. and these particular sub-Firdars. There is another one here called Firdaria variant, which Rod told us to use, but it would seem from the newer scholars like Benjamin Dykes and this Ashwin Subramanian, and there is a British astrologer called Sharon Knight, who worked with Ashwin Subramanian to write his book, and they all are in favor of this one. They seem to think this is the more accurate, remembering that Western astrology history is fractured, and so there are all these different variations, and even in Eastern astrology, which isn't fractured, the different schools have slightly different variations. So, you know what? Which variation you land up using isn't so critical. The main thing is to use the technique and consistently. Just use this technique consistently. We aren't perfect. Astrology is not perfect. So just make the most of what we do have on offer. And I find it to be a very helpful guideline to bring the person into the look forward technique. So yeah, I was just showing you where you can find this information. This you can also print out on its own if that's easier for you to read. I generally find I can read this. The other thing that I love about the Firdaria table is it gives me the ages for all the various years of the person's life. And that is fantastic. So I don't have to add and subtract to find how old they are when they come and when they walk in the door. I can just look it up here and go, like if Princess Anne walked in my door, I'd be going, right, 15 August 2023, she's 73. So if she comes to see me now, she's still 73. Because we haven't got to 15 August 2024 yet. So she's 73 and a half. And so straight away I've got her age. And that can help me with future techniques. So what I would note down for Princess Anne is that she is in a south node Firdar. And the nodes don't get sub-Firdars. They just get south node the south node gets 2 years. So that south node, which is sitting, it's not actually seen in this chart. Here's the north node at 0 Aries. Her south node is therefore at 0 Libra in the 12th house. And so she is in a 12th house that gives us 12th house information by equal. And so if it's a planet, that is much more informative. So I'm going to switch out of Princess Anne because I didn't really give you much history on her. I just wanted you to see a chart with a sun sect, how the Firdarias looked. Okay, so now let's switch over to Winston Churchill, who hopefully is whole sign. Yes, there he is at whole sign. Okay, there's good old Winston Churchill. His sun is in tropical Sagittarius, right down in his 4th house. So straight away we know that his Firdaria are going to start with the moon. And what I wanted to focus on, and I have given you the information. So basically, yeah, I'm happy to use the Alberini Schooner version of the Firdaria that Solar Fire has on offer. That's what I use with my clients at present. If it's good enough for Benjamin Dykes, I think it's good enough for me. Okay, so but if you really want to use the variant, you're welcome to use the variant. Just when you submit assignments and things, you've got to tell me what you've been using so that I can be on the same page as you. Okay, so I've listed how the Firdaria run for lunar people, but it's all written up here and you don't have to remember it. It's Solar Fire does the calculation for you. Okay, so what I've done on page 4, I went to Wikipedia and I just did a brief extract of a history of Churchill. And really, 1939 was when things really took off for him. He became First Lord of the Admiralty. And by 1940, so by 1940, May 1940, he was the Prime Minister. And so he basically saw Britain through that whole Second World War period, which was extremely dramatic. And he was a huge figure on the world stage. You can look and see how many conferences he went to. So let's have a look and see what 1939 looks like. So here we go. 1939, he is sitting here with a Mercury Mars. May 1939, he has a Mercury Mars Firdaria. So the first thing that I'd note when he's coming to see me, I would write over here. Let me just see if I can grab a pen. My writing won't be fantastic, but just to give you ideas on how I annotate things. I always write all over my charts. Find that very helpful. So we're going to take a pen, and I'm going to take I think that size, or maybe take that. Yeah, that size should be enough. Let's take a color. Let's give him brown. Let's give him a brown. Okay. So good old Winston. Well, let's give him the black, because he always spoke about the black dog. That was his depression. Okay. So 1939, we're sitting here. So what I do is I write Mercury over here. Mercury. And that is from October. I don't bother with the day. I just go November 1931 to November 44. And the age at November 31, he was 57. So this Firdaria started when he was 57 years old, until Noel taught us to circle the age so that we can distinguish it from all the other numbers going on. So that runs from November 31 to November 44. Pardon my writing. And that is, he's going to be 70. So it's a 13-year period from age 57 to 70. And then next to Mercury, I write what Mercury is all about. So Mercury in his chart is sitting here in the 3rd house. And so I'll put the house that it's in there. And what is Mercury ruling? Mercury is ruling his ascendant. So Mercury is him, his Virgo ascendant, and Mercury is ruling his 10th house, his midheaven. And so his career and his ascendant are both ruled by this Mercury. So that indicates to us, like, this is a really important Firdaria from 31 to 44. And so that's just, and so I'll say to the person, like, you are currently in this broad theme of it's related to yourself, it's related to your communication, it's related to your identity, it's related to your career. And symbolically as well, Mercury is communications, thinking. I mean, wasn't he so famous for his speeches that he was able to deliver so effectively? Right. And then I will go down to sub-Firdaria. So let's just say he's come to see me in 1940, when he just became the Prime Minister. So he came to see me in about, let's say May 1940. Okay. So then I'm going to look here. I'm going to see, okay, so from May 39, so now we've got Mercury. So we already know all the details about Mercury. So I'll just repeat Mercury here. And then I'll put a little thingy, and then I'll put the Mars. And I'll put all Mars's information. So Mars's information, Mars, we find Mars in his second house. And we find Mars ruling his third house. So I put the rulership as a subscript. That's my little code. Because that makes consultations quick and easy. So I prep it, and then I don't have to go back and figure it all out. I'm ready to go. So there's the one third house. The other one is 8th house. Okay. So now we've got his psychological resources, his financial resources. Let me just let Isabella in. We've got his ability to speak out and his thinking. And we've also got 8th house, some difficult stuff, some dealing with the enemy's resources, the enemy's finances. Because, you know, for a world leader, the chart of the leader can be seen to can be used in mundane astrology actually to represent even the country. So he is dealing with enemy resources, enemy money. I mean, this is all about enemies in the Second World War. So now we've got a combination of him as the Mercury, with his ascendant and midheaven, his communication, Mars. Mars is the war planet. Mars is drive, Mars is fighting. So, and he is having to fight a battle royal for Britain and for the Western world, and he brings in America and all that stuff. So so now, and I just write, this runs from May 39, May 39 to March 41. And then I would mention that I'd say, you know, from May of this year, or from May of last year, let's say he came to see us in 1940, from May of last year to March of next year, there is a warlike character. You know, you'll be called on to be a warrior, and you know, it's about speaking, thinking, communicating, dealing with your own resources, and dealing with other people's resources, and you know, specifically the enemies of Britain in his case, because we would know that. And then just to note that from 41 it shifts, and then it goes into Sun. So Sun is traditionally the leader. His Sun sitting down there in the 4th house, ruling the 12th house. So we could know, like from March 41 to Jan 43, there's going to be like secret things going on. He will have to perhaps be dealing with the Secret Service of Britain, and you know, counteracting. You know, that was a time when they were like trying to break the codes of the Germans and find out what was going on, and there was secret negotiations, I'm sure, with the, you know, with the US before those big agreements and that got signed. So you get the picture here, and that's what you're going to tell your clients. You know, you've got a context for them. And basically, that's Firdaria. It will literally, it's generally how I start my look forward reading. And I mean, I'll obviously have done all the other prep, looked at the dignities of the planets and all that, but for this lesson, I'm assuming that you've already done that. In the homework assignment, you're going to need to do that so that you know whether it's strong or weak. And then in terms of sect, you also want to know, like, his is a night sect, therefore Venus is his most helpful benefic, and Saturn is his most difficult malefic. That's really going to cause trouble for him. So even though but you've got to moderate that because Saturn is in rulership in Aquarius, it's good to have the malefics in cadent houses because they only get 25% opportunity. So that's just background, okay? The big thing for your client is you want to be able to tell them that. Okay, so now I'm going to just turn off my annotation and we're going to go out of here. And I'm doing ticks. I don't want to do ticks. Okay, I want to go out of here. The next thing that I want to show you is Dasas Bhuktis. It's a similar technique, but for that, we need to use Lahiri. So I'll open this up. This is Winston Churchill's chart drawn for the sidereal zodiac. So we can very happily do Western sidereal. And you, instead of using tropical, you use Lahiri, which is the difference between the tropical and the sidereal zodiac. It's the most accurate one. It's the closest to what the Vedic astrologers use. I've got another Vedic package, and so I've checked it. Okay, let me just rub out. Let me just find the markup pen. Okay. I can't find the markup pen. So what you want to do here is you're going to have to go to reports and gosh, oh, here we go. Oh, you know what? This Zoom can get really irritating. Here we go. I want to go to annotate and I want to please rub this out. Okay, let me just rub this out. Okay. Right. So you can go to tabulations, and you can come down here to Vedic dashas. The dashas are the big periods. The bhuktis are the sub periods. So it's very similar to Firdaria, but this one I would very definitely use with the sidereal zodiac. You do not have to use both. I would suggest you just, if you're going to do tropical, use the Firdaria. And if you're going to do sidereal, use the Dasas Bhuktis. Okay, and this one, it's different because this is based on the nakshatras of the moon, and that's the lunar zodiac, which starts the whole process, which is why I say I really believe if you're going to use Dasas Bhuktis, you must be using Western sidereal zodiac. So like in my school of astrology, Jane being the new lady here, you can use sidereal, you can use tropical. When you do homework and things, you just have to tell me. Okay, so that is your Dasas Bhuktis. Again, you're just going to read it off as you've read off Firdaria. I'm not going to go through the whole work. You do exactly the same as you would do here. Okay, so let's close that down. All right, I just want to have a look. Let me go back to my presentation, which I've closed. And in the notes, I have given you Subramyan's. He showed in his book, you can get the breakdown with the nodal variation, but that's very complex. I would just stay, and it's going to take you time, and you don't want to take time. You want to be able to do this nice and quickly so that you don't spend hours and hours doing this. Okay, so there's our Firdaria, and here is our Dasas Bhuktis. Okay, so the next thing, which is such a super useful, and in the chart, I've also given you a printout from my Vedic program. It's called Deva Guru. So if you want to go the whole Vedic route, that's a very nice program. You do have to pay though. So if you've got solar fire, you can easily, the Dasas Bhuktis are the same. I checked them. So yeah, you only want to, if you're going to really study Vedic astrology. I did an introduction course that lasted the whole of last year. Very, very tough course. So basically, you don't need to worry about Devaguru unless you want to go study Vedic astrology. But there you can see how many times you can break it down. It's got 4 different levels. So you can go down and down and down into into months, which is much more refined, because Vedic astrology has been unbroken for hundreds of years. They've got a very, very fine-tuned system. All right. The last 2 techniques for this evening's lecture is transiting Saturn. Remember, for the ancients, Saturn was the slowest planet. It is a time lord on its own. It's in the ancient Greek, they called it the chronocrator, which literally means time lord. And in Grant Louis' very good book called Astrology for the Millions, he explains how he used transiting Saturn, and he did hundreds of charts. He was a lecturer, and he was an English lecturer, and he wasn't interested in astrology, but his mother-in-law was an astrologer, so he became fascinated, and then he literally investigated hundreds of charts and found this little pattern, which is so quick and easy, and that's why I like to use it, because again, it gives context. So basically, this little slide is just a summary. We look at Saturn, by which house it's in. We look at Saturn relative to the natal sun of the person. We look at Saturn relative to the natal Saturn of the person. Okay. So 3 different ways of using that transiting Saturn, just to get very, very quick information and context. And then I'm going to take you through the last slide. No, we won't do that. The last slide is the secondary progress moon, which has approximately the same period as Saturn. So Saturn is like 27 and a half to 28, 29 years. And secondary progress moon also has a cycle that's about 27 and a half to 28, 29 year cycle. So both giving like a nice long-term view, insight into where this person is in their life. Okay, so I'm going to hop out of here and I'm going to hop back into here. And what we're going to do, I'm going to take the tropical chart. And what I'm going to do with the tropical chart, let me just delete this Lahiri from here. We'll stay with tropical. So we're going to create a quadri wheel, because that at a glance you can see what's going on. And I've put a quadri wheel in your notes for you, but it's quite a small picture, so we'll do it up on the screen. So all you do is you go to chart. So you've got your chart that you're working on, your client. You go to transit, progression, and direction. And the first thing you're going to do is a transit chart. And this one I did, let's just double check when I did it. I did it for the 8th of May, 1945. Oh, that is V-Day, VE Day, Victory Day. Okay, so 8th of May, 1945. And I've just kept it Woodstock, which is where Churchill was born. And you just go, okay, and there you have the transits in Woodstock on the 8th of May, 1945. You go back to your natal, you go back here to chart, you go back to transits, progressions, and directions. Now we are going to do secondary progressions. Keep it at that same date. So you do all 3 of these extra charts, same date, secondary progressions. There you have it. Back to natal, you go back to chart, back to transits, directions, progressions, and now you're going to come to solar arc directed. Keep it natal, keep it the same date, everything stays the same. So now you have natal, transits, progressions, and directed is solar arcs. We've chosen solar arcs for the direction. There are other directions, but this is enough for us. Okay, now we're going to go to view. We're going to go to a quadri wheel. We're going to put Churchill's natal in the beginning. Then I like to put the progression. Then I like to put the solar arc. And right on the very outside, I like to put the transits. And review it. And voila, there it is. And so we can see here, we've got the natal, the middle inner secondary progressions. The next one is the middle outer solar arc, outside, outermost transits. And so what we're going to do, we're going to first of all notice where Saturn is in this chart. Saturn, transiting Saturn, is going through his 11th house, and it is going, it's in the sign of Cancer, but we don't really need to know that. It's going through his 11th house. Okay, so what we got, I haven't made a slide, so I'll need you to go to your notes on page 12. And what Louis discovered was when Saturn can basically, if we take the angles as the crucial parts of the chart. So for this exercise, let us, yeah, well, we can use the angles. Here we go. We just have to take 29 Virgo. Let me get my drawing pens out again. Annotate. Okay, so there is our ascendant. I'm going to do that in red. Let's just get back to my pens. Annotate. And I'm going to, when I want a thicker line, and the color I'm going to take is red. Okay, so here's my ascendant line coming out here. And the descendant is going to lie opposite at 29 degrees of Pisces. There. And then midheaven here sitting at 29 Gemini. So there's our midheaven. We'll just put an arrow on these lot. And here is our IC at 29 degrees of Sagittarius. So this I've done in the wrong spot. Let's just fix it up quickly. Annotate. There. Back to pen. Back to red. Here. There. Oopsie. Squiggle, squiggle. Okay. This is RC. All right. So turn that off. So basically, Saturn can travel in Churchill's chart. Saturn is currently traveling between the MC and down to the ascendant. And what Grant Louis had to say about that was that this, as Saturn is coming towards that ascendant, the person can reach a second peak. So this is still powerful because Saturn's still up in the sky. But the most powerful one, if your client Saturn is moving from the descendant up towards the midheaven, in other words, if it's in this sector of the chart, this is fantastic because that is when they're going to reach their maximum power. Let me just get the spotlight. So in this point, Saturn is going to be reaching their maximum power. And I mean, I can just give you an example from my own life. My Saturn for the past, I don't know, however many years, 7 odd years. These are basically 7-year sector transits. It's now just gone past my midheaven. So basically, and at this point, that was when Nancy asked me if I wouldn't take over the CAA. So you know, that's basically telling me that's my maximum power. I can just not that I care about power, but in terms of me being out there on the world stage, like that's it. So I better make a good job of it. And now Saturn's going to slowly start descending, but it's still going to be strong because it's up above the horizon. Okay. Now, if your client Saturn is starting to move from the ascendant down to the midheaven, that is when they are likely to want to be receding from the public eye. What on the ascendant is fine. They will have some achievement. He talks about some second peak so that it's likely that something positive, something that they get known for happens there as well. But once the Saturn starts to make this journey down here, then you must know that the energy is more withdrawn. So if they come with a huge plan and they're going to want to be running some multinational corporation and starting from scratch with a big push, you're going to have to need to counsel them and say, look, your energy is more about being in your home space, being out of the public eye. So to try and maybe shift them towards something that's more in line with what Saturn as the Time Lord is telling us. And then from IC up to here, that's like a new beginning. So once Saturn gets down to the bottom of the chart here and starts lifting up again to here, this is a new beginning, but there's 7 years of putting in effort before they start growing into the power that's going to max out over there. So, this is so fabulously useful. And it can be that the moon and Saturn are doing different things, the secondary progress moon. So then you can say to them, well, look, part of you is going to want to be withdrawn. So they're going to make time for yourself to get away from the public eye, to retreat into some lovely space that you're happy with, that you're happy to be in. But then at other times, so I've had that. I've had a client or two, or more than a client or two. They definitely, Saturn and the moon don't necessarily coordinate. And if they do coordinate, then you're going to say to the person, wow, this is the time for major achievements. If they're both doing this sector, you're going to go, this is the time for major achievements, go for it. And even if they're coming here and they want to do big things, you can say, yes, fantastic, do it. It's not going to be as powerful as this sector. This is the most powerful sector, but still. So this is very handy. I just love this idea. It's so simple and so quick. You can literally spot it and you can just put a circle around that Saturn there. Your eye will go there. And I mean, you can see it's 4 little centers. But the next thing that we do with Saturn is we look at how is Saturn working relative to the natal sun. So in this case, the natal sun is here. Saturn is moving from the square, which he calls, this would actually be the lower square, I think, from Saturn. Yeah. If you look in the diagram, the conjunction is there, and then as Saturn goes beyond the sun, it becomes a lower square. So here is, oh no, wait, where's his sun? Where's his sun? Here. Okay, so there's his sun. So there is opposition to sun. Okay, so Saturn is currently going from opposition back to joining up with the natal sun. So that is the upper square. So he's in upper square. And then you can just look up here. When Saturn is at upper square, there is some kind of assertion of power happens. So he is still asserting his power, and certainly he is at this point in his life, he has triumphed, and he has issued that victory speech. He did resign shortly afterwards, but then I think they re-elected him and so on. So there is another indicator for you. So you've got the 4 little positions, and you can, it doesn't have to be exact, it can just be roughly around about that. You can get information about that. Then the last thing is to know where Saturn is relative to this person's life. So, because basically you've got so he says, like, when Saturn is conjoining natal Saturn. So where is Churchill's Saturn? Let's look for it here. So Saturn has moved on from here. It's moved all the way from Aquarius to 9. Taurus would be the opening square. And so it's busy moving toward opposition at Leo. Okay. So it's here talks about here transiting Saturn opposite its climaxing developments occurred, which along the lines laid down for where Saturn conjoins Saturn. So I just want to check how old he is. Let me just quickly go back to one of my Firdaria pages. Because that tells you immediately. Let's just have a look and see. The Ferdarias are I always just look up the age on the Ferdarias. So we've drawn this thing for 1945. In 1945, he is 70. He was born in 74. He's 71. Okay, so he's 71. So we know that he's in his wisdom cycle. Okay, because just by the first 30 years, and that's what I've given you in that little summary there. I've given you a quick summary down below. The first Saturn cycle is authority, the authority of the parent for the first 7 years. Then the teachers comes in for 7 to 14 years old. The peers become the authority 14 to 21, and only from 21 to 28 does the person actually come into their own authority, which is why Rod Susskind always said, don't push people to decide what they're going to do with their lives if they don't know clearly before they're like 21. Let them go and work and travel and find out who they are, and then take that big decision closer to 21 when they're stepping into their own. Even 22 or 23 is fine. Okay. Once Saturn returns, so once Saturn has gone all the way around the chart, that's our second Saturn cycle, that is a responsibility cycle. So the first 7 years, it's a great time from 28 onwards, take on big, like buy a house, buy a big car, buy your car, take on a big job with loads of responsibility, start bringing children into the family. Take on the responsibilities. If you want to work with the ancient Saturn Time Lord concept, then you're going to max out those responsibilities after 14 years. And then from there on, you're going to start to release some of those responsibilities, lighten the load. Because say you had your children at around 28, by 14, they're already in high school. So they're less of a full-time kind of job, and then they're easing off to go to varsity, which is less kind of parenting. And then the last 7 years is releasing, so that you're preparing for the next cycle, which I like to call the wise elder cycle. And so in that cycle, you begin to share what you've learned. The first 7 years, start sharing what you've learned, like from around about age 58, 59, 60, which is where I find myself. And that's, here is me. I start teaching. I did a bit of weather before that as well. But like, I've really decided to start teaching seriously here at 58. I'm 60. So here we go. I'm teaching seriously now. Weather is not such a mainstream. Now I'm teaching mainstream stuff. So there is the Saturn for him. He's already done that. He's already done 7 years from 60 to 67. He is now maxing out because Saturn is coming to oppose. So he's maxing out, sharing his wisdom with the world. the wisdom that he's earned over like a lifetime of, and he has been in politics and he has been in communication. He was a journalist. He traveled. He came to South Africa in the Boer War. He did a whole lot of stuff. So there he's sharing his knowledge. And then once he gets to maximum, this quarter here, so you would tell him, you'd say, like, this is fantastic. This is the time to be sharing your knowledge. This is the time to be guiding nations, to manage this disaster that happened in the world, which is like Germany trying to conquer the whole of Europe and Britain, and eventually Germany and Italy declared war on the United States, and Japan joined in it. It was chaotic times. And then once he gets beyond that opposition, if he came later than that, then it's time to kind of start slowing down again, start releasing it, maybe write a book or consolidating things, letting things go slowly, and then release as you get to the end of that cycle, which is like 88, 87, probably 87 to 89-ish. Okay, so like these are quick things. I mean, it's taken me a whole long time to explain, but literally you just notice this, what phase is he in, relative to Saturn, relative to his sun, and relative to the angles of the chart. Boom, quick. And you've got some useful information that you can help your client to contextualize their life with. And then we are going to be doing the same thing with the secondary progressed moon. So, I should have kept that chart up. Let's just repeat it. So we're going to go up here to quadriwheel. And I mean, I think probably a good idea to print the wheel out. I mean, I would do that. Okay, so now we're going to just do the exact same thing with the secondary progressed moon, but slightly different interpretation. So this fantastic information comes from Bernadette Brady's book called Predictive Astrology, the Eagle and the Lark, page 113. And what I've given you is like just very summarized little bites. She gives a whole big write-up on Joan of Arc, going through the various stages and that, all very interesting. If you've got the book, I suggest that you also read that. It's very, very nicely done. And again, this is also pretty quick because we don't want to spend hours laboring through all this jazz. All right, let me just go and get the highlighter going here. All right, so where is Churchill's secondary progressed moon? Churchill's, and now the new moon is the secondary progressed sun conjunct the secondary progressed moon, okay? And the secondary progressed moon is the fastest secondary progressed planet because it's based on, secondary progression is based on every day after birth. So every day after birth in the ephemeris becomes a year. So you can see here, he is, in terms of the phase of the moon is just beginning to separate. It's going ahead of the sun. So it is in the very, very first phase, which we'll come to, but just to note that. It is in the 7th house. It hasn't yet got to his 29 Pisces descendant, so it hasn't quite popped its head over the horizon, and it's in the sign of Pisces. Okay, so she wants us to take note of 3 things: the sign it's in, the house it's in, as well as the phase that it's in. Okay, so let's have a look for, and literally, I mean, you can use this as a lookout table. You can use your own knowledge of Pisces as well. She just gives it very nicely in the context of what she says about the secondary progressed moon. It is a spotlight that shines on things. And we will come to that when we do time map. And if the secondary progressed moon is shining, say, on a planet in a chart, Rod said it just spotlights that planet for a month. And I'll show you how to mark up the time map and so on with that. So basically, she said what the ancients called the moon the translator of light, because it moved energy from one body, you know, in the sky to another body. It moves energy from one part of the chart to another part of the chart. It's a mover and groover, the good old moon. And so she said, what happened with the secondary progress moon, we can use it for predictive information. And we don't have to bring in nurturing emotions, mothering, feminine, all that jazz. We don't have to. We just consider it like a torch, shining its light and moving its way through this person's natal chart. Okay, so activating natal chart. So basically she said, if the moon is in a yang sign, which is your fire and air, or your masculine, and other, she likes yang and yin, then she said, basically there is a desire to push energy outward into the world. If it's going through a yin sign, then it's more withdrawn. And in terms of sign, the moon is going to change sign roughly every 2.5 years. And in terms of the phase, the moon is going to change phase roughly every 3.5 years, because there are only 8 phases that we work with in the West. And there are 12 zodiac signs. So that's where we get those 2 periods. So that's also just good to know, because then it helps you very quickly to orientate yourself. Okay, so we just can nip down to Pisces, which is on page 16, and she says of Pisces, there's an unconscious desire to reconnect with the higher self, the deeper self, the inner self, the divine. And dreams are flooding in, and a fantasy world, and becoming reclusive. So at this stage, at this V-Day stage, like, you know, he's been pushing since 1939, 6 years of intense, and he's had health complications. You can look and see in that thing. He had pneumonia, he's had atrial fibrillation of his heart and all that jazz. So he is like probably needing some rest, basically. And it is like below the horizon. So probably definitely needy. So you can see he is in a more gentle time now. And okay, that's the first thing. And then we can see, okay, he's mid-Pisces. He's going to be there for another 1.5 years. So he is not going to be the most effective prime minister. He does get re-elected, as far as I can recall, but he's not the most effective, because first of all, he's not so well. You know, he is not so young and all that stuff. So the Pisces is telling us that. Like, if he had to ask me, if he came to see me in May of 1945 now, I would say to him, gee, you know, it might be a good idea not to stand for re-election. Mentor someone else. Write a book about your experiences. Take it a bit easy. Like, I mean, he also did art. So, you know, I'd say to him, like, maybe get back into your art and that kind of thing. So there we have it. Next thing, we're going to look at the phase of the moon. So we've got new moon, which is 0 to 45 degrees. Then we've got the crescent moon from 45 degrees, 0 to 45 degrees oriental, ahead of the sun. So here's the sun at 19 Aquarius, and it's not even 30 degrees ahead yet, because it's 28 degrees ahead, because it's sitting here at 17 Pisces. So he's very much still in that new moon phase. And remember the phases, we said 3.5 years. So he is, but the phase is 45 degrees. So he's 30s, he's like 2/3 of the way through. So he's probably got about another year in this new moon phase. So something different started probably like 2 years before. And I think that's when he really started to get quite ill. So it's a shift. And then you can look and see where the new moon was. We'd have to track that back. I can't do this calculation in my head, but we could look and see where that fell. That might be interesting. And I probably would do that for clients. But for now, let's just notice. The main thing that you have to notice for your client is basically where they are now. So he's still in that new moon phase, but you you really want to know where the seeds are thrown, which sign and which house. So it's probably whole sign houses 6th house, and it's probably early Aquarius. I'm just guessing. Okay, so right. And then basically the phase tells us some information. So again, I've just given you a very, very abbreviated summary out of Bernadette's book. If you want more stuff, her book is fantastic. And then basically new moon, it's about emergence. So, and it's sowing seeds. It's the start of a theme that goes on for the next 30 years. So like I would go, like this man should actually be thinking about retiring now. He's done a fantastic job. Let him take it a bit easier. But so that's what I would advise him. Of course, he's Winston Churchill and he's as stubborn as anything. And so I don't think he is going to be retiring anytime soon. But that's what I would counsel the person who walked in my door. Okay, so basically what Brady says, the way of life changes. And look, I think he had to change how he did things because he wasn't as well as he was before. And the unconscious needs and expectations that are coming through. Okay, and it's an instinctual thing. So it's kind of happening whether he wants it to happen or not. This phase is impacting his life. Okay, so that's the phases. You can read through all the other phases, but see how quickly it's done? It's very quick. And then the last thing is we look at the moon going through the signs. So the secondary progressed moon by whole sign is in the 7th. If you were going to do a proportional house system, it would be in the 6th. So we can read both of them. And what she just said is like one house follows another house. And so like she just wanted us to notice that like after the creativity of the 5th house, there's a hard work phase or there's a service. Like, you know, you have to put what you know into service for others, or you have to work really hard to refine it into some really fine-tuned craft. And she also wants us to note the position relative to the midheaven. So because the midheaven, again, that's the peak. That's the peak of somebody's ability. So let's have a look here. His 7th house, the first sixth house, hard work and service. For normal people, younger people, it's all relative. He's not that young. There would be raising of children and polishing your craft to a fine art. And then 7th house is about marriage, divorce, lawsuits, new relationships starting, old relationships ending. So we've got those two possible, depending on which chart you want to read. And, you know, you can do both for your client, but my advice, like stick with one and just work with that because the one's going to lead into the other anyway. I have learned over the years of trying all different things, just be consistent and keep the reading consistent and it will flow as it's meant to, because what gets a bit altered here gets adjusted there and the reading happens just fine. And if you're finding this confusing and you don't know, talk to me, send me notes on WhatsApp voice. I'm not always available to speak on the phone because I have got a bit of a hectic schedule, but send me WhatsApp voice notes and tell me, and then we can chat through it. And also in the Q&A, we can talk about these kind of things. And so basically what I've given you here is like her little summary of the moon in each thing. So like for some, like well, let's just quickly look at it. We are a little bit over time, but we did start a little bit late. So the secondary progress moon moving through the 1st house, she talks about building of the self. And then 2nd house, so 1st and 2nd houses are building of the self. And so if you've got a client with a moon doing that, you can say to them, like, wow, this is a great time to like really decide on how you're going to present yourself. Who are you? Be, firm up on your identity, firm up on even your appearance. Like, is this how you want to look? Do you want to add muscle? Do you want to change your hair color? Do you want whatever? That's building of self, building of the identity. Even your signature, Brady says you can work on. Then third house she gives to expression for secondary progressed moon. Fourth and fifth, she gives to safety and creativity, security basically, and creativity. Sixth and seventh and eighth, half of eighth, she gives to responsible relationships to others. And then half of 8 through 9, 10, and 11, she gives to achievement. So you can see with him, he is still about responsible relationships to others. So he does stay on, he does continue, to do his duties and all the rest of it, even though he is of quite a grand age. And then when the SPMoon starts going through 12, that is a great time to retreat, so that when SPMoon pops up again in first, you are basically ready to be powerful and strong and get your message out there, engage people and all the rest. And then just to bring the thing back to the midheaven, like in terms of achievement, the highest achievement is going to be when the moon is in the vicinity of that midheaven. Okay, so I'm just going to close this, hop out of here. And we're going to just hop back onto the slide and go to the last slide. Let me just rub this stuff out. Where's my rubber? Rubber, take that off. Okay, and so basically that's what I've just done with you, is that secondary progressed moon. The solar arc comes later. So we haven't used that solar arc middle outer wheel. We've only used the secondary progressed wheel and we've used the transit. But that one chart is great for many things. So I brought it in now, but we will pick it up again when we come back to solar arcs. Because at a glance, you can see where all the solar arcs are. And I'll explain the difference of solar arc and secondary progressed moon. So just remember for now, secondary progressed moon is every day after birth. You can read a line off the ephemeris, and that is 1 year in the person's life. It's a symbolic thing. And so he was 71, we said. So you'd go 71 days after birth. That's what solar fire is doing, is going 71 days. And how many? 71 years. It's going to go 71 days. And it's working out the fine tuning, like how far along he is on his 71st year, and plotting those exact points. You don't have to calculate by hand, in my opinion. It takes far too long. So there we go. Go to the last slide. There we go. Just to say thank you for being part of the lecture. And I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable. And I am going to end this off now. And then I am going to, let me just stop share. I'm going to stop recording.